Like the stars reflect the sun, maybe we are part reflection, maybe we begin somewhere along a never-ending chain of light. Repeat, reflect, repeat. Here, right now, can we hope to find the truth, the better angels of our nature? Like the dark before the dawn, can we see all we've becoming? Do we have to run from what is true that hurts? Can we let it land? Repeat, reflect, repeat. Here, right now, can we hope to find the truth, the better angels of our nature? Here, right now, can I let go of what I once knew? I don't have to have the answers.
Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here, both in person in the space and those attending virtually. It is good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. My name is Kristin Daniels, and I am a member on our board of directors. Whoever and wherever you are warmly invited to join us for Social Hour at 10, either in person or on Zoom. The Zoom link will be in the chat box. For those in person, the Social Hour will take place in the courtyard. You have the option to join a group when you exit the building. Coming up this week, your pastoral care companions are hosting a workshop on coping with transition. There are 3 opportunities for the workshop. Come share your grief, your thoughts, and your joy as we learn how different people cope with transition. Contact Reverend Sarah for more information. You are invited to join our fall work day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on October 9th. The Land Stewardship Committee will be gathering for a fun morning of work, camaraderie, for food, and fresh air. Lunch will be provided outside. For more information, contact Rob Jackson. In addition to myself, service participants today include Reverend Roger, Reverend Sarah, Laura Stone-Gerage, with music from the OK Factor and Ellis. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come into this space which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes, for here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into the space where we can heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into the space where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this space. Together, we make it holy space. Jack Peterson will light the chalice today.
The theme for this month is community. To me, community is the ability to ask for help. One of my favorite poets and activists, Alok Vaid-Menon, spoke recently in a podcast about the importance of interconnectedness and straying from the script. A lot of the world feels very scripted to me right now. Many things I look at and think, oh, I can't change that. And alone, that might be true, but with help, I have hope. In their podcast, they said, our superpower is interconnectedness. Today, I light the chalice for this community at White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church and the hope it gives me for the future.
Join me in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit to embody our hymn this morning. Again, we will not be singing in person. You are welcome to hum very softly. And to those at home, please do sing out as loud as you prefer. So rise, body or spirit, for our hymn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So one of the reasons why I love stories so much is because they invite us into a practice of sacred imagination. We can imagine ourselves into different worlds, and we can imagine ourselves into how others are feeling. And this morning I'm going to invite you into this practice to imagine yourself into the story I'm about to share. And as you do, I'm going to invite you to also be in your body a bit. Our main character in this story, a bur oak, needs to do some moving and stretching, and I invite you to stretch right along with the tree as I read. The story is called Prairie Tree by Kristin. The tree didn't remember the day the family rolled over the prairie and stopped at the bottom of the gentle hills. It didn't watch as they built their home out of sod and bits of lumber. The tree couldn't have recalled how the family rode out to the stand of bur oaks to collect furry acorns. It didn't watch them plant the acorns or see them celebrating when one green shoot shot up towards the sky. But the tree did remember the family carrying water all the way down from the river to pour on the sapling when the prairie sun beat down. It recalled how the children would lie in its circle of shade and giggle and chatter. The tree would chatter back in its own tree way. Then one day, the tree saw the family pack up all that they owned. It felt the arms of the children circle around it and watched as they rolled over the hills and out of sight. After that, no one brought the tree any water when the prairie sun beat down. Some years were so dry, the tree didn't grow any taller, just twistier and more gnarled the way that bur oaks do. And maybe it was the dryness, or maybe it was the ground squirrels and mice that were hungry for acorns, but no other trees sprouted there. The little bur oak just stood alone at the bottom of the gentle hills. It watched the big prairie sky and listened to the chatter of birds and creatures that came and went. The bur oak knew no other family. Then one day, 2 crows came and rested on its branches. They called and squawked about their sisters and brothers and cousins the way crows do. "Family," the tree whispered aloud. "I once had family." "Family," said the crows. "Everybody's got family." "No," said the tree. "They rolled away." "Rolled away?" squawked the crows. "Your family is just over that hill." "My family?" asked the tree. "The children?" "Children?" squawked the crows even harder. "Your family of trees is just over that hill. Can't you see them?" The tree stretched as far as its twisty branches would allow, but it could not see beyond the hills around it. "No," said the tree, "I cannot." "What a shame," said the crows. "You are about as tall as a bur oak can get in these parts." "What a shame, what a shame," said the crows, and they flew away. Once again, the tree stood at the bottom of the gentle hills. A family of trees, it thought, a family of trees. It tried again to stretch as high as its twisty branches would allow, but it was no use. It still could not see above the hills around it. "I must see them," thought the little tree, "I must." And so the little bur oak dug its taproot deeper into the soil. It reached down and down and down until it felt just a little bit of moisture. It pulled the moisture up through its roots, up into its trunk, and all the way out to the ends of its branches. It spread its leaves wide to catch the prairie sun. Then it stretched and it reached and it reached and it stretched, and it felt as if it were higher in the prairie sun than it had ever been before. But still, it could not see over the hills around it. The tree drooped over right where it stood. Then, just barely, it heard a whisper. The tree stilled its own branches to listen. There it was, the whisper of a tree, of many trees. The little bur oak sent its roots down just a little deeper. It spread its leaves just a little bit wider, and it reached up just a little bit higher until just over the hill it could see the twisty, gnarled tops of bur oak trees swaying under the big prairie sky. On days when the wind was just right, it could hear those bur oaks whispering away. And on the days when the wind was just right, the not-so-little bur oak could whisper right back and chatter away to its family of trees.
We are once again going to be sharing the cares of our congregation as part of our meditation today. We've collected the slips of paper from the bowl over there. We will now give the opportunity for those on Zoom to enter into the chat box any joys or sorrows you would like to share in this space and beyond. So now, join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation. Find a comfortable place for your body. Take a breath and be as still as you can be. And listen and hear if you can hear the whispers and chatter of the trees, of your family, of those in the room with you. Take a moment to think about the people in your life. In this great web of life, we are all interconnected. We are all family. Bring to mind the people you are closest to. Hold them in your heart. Bring to mind folks in your life who you miss. Folks you haven't seen in a while or don't feel connected to or who have gone. Hold them in your heart. Bring to mind the people you have lost in your life and hold them in your heart. You might imagine that there would be no more room in your heart after holding all of these people, but we know better. There's room for all of us. Hold in your heart all the folks in our congregation who are struggling with mental health, those struggling with addiction, those living with grief and loss as close companions. We hold close in our hearts these members and friends of the congregation. Mick Coette's brother, Earl, who died of cancer Monday, September 27th. And now, this is the moment where you can speak aloud the names that you would like us all to hold together. Into this silence and out of it, I invite you to speak. We hold them all. Amen.
Your financial gift to our congregation supports the programs we've come to rely on as anchors in our lives. Programs for youth and families, music, classes, small groups, justice work, public witness, pastoral care, rites of passage, and Sunday services. You can contribute to the offering today by sending a check or by following the easy prompt to text to give on your screen and in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together.
Our first reading today is from W.S. Merwin. Your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color. Our second reading is Picnic Lightning by Billy Collins. It is possible to be struck by a meteor or a single-engine plane while reading in a chair at home. Pedestrians are flattened by safes falling from rooftops, mostly within the panels of comics, but still, we know it's possible, as well as the flash of summer lightning, the thermos toppling over, spilling out on the grass. We know the message can be delivered from within. The heart, no Valentine, decides to quit after lunch. The powder shut off like a switch or a tiny dark ship unmoored in the flow of the body's rivers. The brain a monastery, defenseless on the shore. This is what I think about when I shovel compost into a wheelbarrow, when I fill the long flower boxes, then press into rows the limp roots of red impatience, the instant hand of death always ready to burst forth from the sleeve of his voluminous cloak. Then the soil is full of marvels, bits of leaf like flakes off a fresco, red-brown pine needles, a beetle quick to burrow back into its loam. Then the wheelbarrow is a wilder blue, the clouds a brighter white, and all I hear is the rasp of the steel edge against a round stone, the small plants singing with lifted faces, and the click of the sundial as 1 hour sweeps into the next.
Grief is always present in our lives. Losing loved ones, losing people, places, things, parts of our lives, this is the human condition. Grief is an embodied presence in our life. I imagine from that very moment when we are expelled from the body that grew us in its womb, that first cry, of course, has a physiological purpose, but it is also symbolic of our first grief journey. Clearly, we Americans are in a season of more widespread grief. Around 700,000 of us have died of COVID-19. A display this week in the National Mall in Washington captures this. There's a flag for each of those 700,000 people. It covers 20 acres on the mall. One of those flags stands for the across the street neighbor and dear friend of Amy's and mine in Appleton. Ken died of COVID-19 a year ago next Monday. He had a lung condition. He was very careful, but he went to Walgreens shortly before he died to get a flu shot. There were unmasked people, and that's probably where he got the disease. No doubt, many of you have been personally touched by people who have died. And there are so many other grief journeys over the past 18 months. To name a few, I think about graduating seniors who missed out on their graduation ceremony and then maybe went off to college, but it was a solitary experience. Families that could not physically be with each other, including with loved ones in assisted living or nursing homes for months and months at a time. Family and friends who could not grieve together the death of a loved one, whether from COVID or something else. Black Americans and other marginalized people who have been harder hit by the pandemic in so many different ways. And grief is of course more palpable here at White Bear UU Church with all of the staff transitions and with the seemingly endless changes as we all continue to navigate together through the pandemic. I'll zero in this morning on grieving the death of a loved one, but I want to make space for these other kinds of grief too. Grief is grief, regardless of what part of our lives is now missing. Whether it's the death of a loved one or a pet, a classmate moving away, ending a job, or having a beloved minister leave, it's grief. The first and foremost thing to say about grief is that there is no way around it. The only way to journey through grief is to feel it, to process it, to sit with it. Pema Chodron asserts that nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know. Certainly that's true with grief. In truth, grief never completely goes away because there is always more that it has to teach us. Frequently we circle back to it. Old griefs come back with new lessons. But we can get to the point where we can accommodate a particular loss and move forward wiser, spiritually and emotionally deeper. And by accommodate, I mean make space for this new reality in our lives, in our understanding. When I encounter life's biggest challenges, like grief, I often look for guidance from stories and mythology. Amy talked in the story about sacred imagination. These are embodied in myth. And the myth that most accompanies me during grief is the story of Orpheus and his beloved Eurydice. So just before their wedding, Eurydice is attacked by a satyr. In the struggle, she falls onto a nest of vipers and is fatally bitten on the heel. Orpheus discovers her body. An exquisite musician, he pours out his bottomless grief in beautiful songs of lamentation. Orpheus decides to go to the underworld in hopes of seeing Eurydice one more time. His mournful music softens Hades and Persephone's hearts, and they offer him a deal. He and Eurydice can return to the realm of the living forever. But there's one condition. As they walk towards the gates between the underworld and this world, Eurydice must walk behind Orpheus, and he must not look back at her. If he does, the deal's off. For whatever reason, he looks back, and he loses her again forever. So this myth offers another picture of liminal space, that space between and betwixt we've explored over the past month. Pictures that we have had of that space are crossing a threshold. In Jack's beautiful sermon last week, portaging with a canoe. Grief is also a liminal space, and in that story, there is a threshold between this world and the underworld. How often during grief do I, like Orpheus, wish I could get my loved one back or have one more glimpse? I think about my beloved mom, who died 10 minutes into the new year back in 2011. Especially during that first year, I wanted to see her one more time, that twinkle in her eye, that smile that reassured me that all would be well with the world. If I knew how to get to the underworld to fetch her, I think I would have. Grief makes us think magical, absurd thoughts, as Joan Didion wrote in her book, The Year of Magical Thinking, in the aftermath of her husband's death. And there's another way that the story of Orpheus and Eurydice speaks to me. Megan O'Rourke, in her book, The Long Goodbye, captures this well. The story of Orpheus is not just about the desire of the living to resuscitate the dead, but about the ways in which the dead drag us along into their shadowy realm because we cannot let them go. That's how I felt about my mom. For about a year, I felt like I was roaming in the land of the dead looking for her. I was not ready to let her go. So I learned some things in that journey through the underworld for a year or so after my mom died. I learned how much it matters to create time and space to absorb the physical reality of death. Most Americans today, and even more Unitarian Universalists in the United States, have banished the dead from our proximity. Someone dies, the undertaker comes, whisks them away, and the next thing we see is they're in a box as ashes. One writer likens how we deal with the dead in our society to the flush toilet. My mom died early on a Saturday morning. One brother was not able to get there in time, and he felt it was important to see her body, so on Monday we arranged with the funeral home to see her. I accompanied him. That view was not my favorite experience or picture in my mind, and yet I swear it was a valuable part of my grief journey. The fact of her death was pretty hard to deny, standing next to her. That image would help during those bouts of magical thinking I had following her death. I also learned in grief that it is easy to get tired and distracted and disoriented. This makes sense. It is exhausting to trudge through the underworld. I'm sure Orpheus got tired too. And of course, being in two worlds simultaneously is enormously disorienting. Life goes on when we grieve. We still have to work or go to school and rake the leaves and do our laundry and pay our taxes. We can't take a time out from this world to concentrate completely on the underworld. I learned in grief that self-pity is pretty easy to fall into. Joan Didion writes that when we mourn our losses, we also mourn, for better or for worse, ourselves, as we were, as we are no longer, as we one day will not be at all. Suddenly, I can imagine not me lowering my mother's ashes into the earth, but my kids lowering my ashes, and I feel pretty sorry for myself. I also learned that I really need community. I need family and friends and congregation, especially during times of grief. Community is my lifeblood. My kids and my wife offering loving support, friends driving 7 hours to be there at the service for my mother, a congregant sending me an email saying, "Welcome to this club of people who have lost their mom." These things mattered immensely in the aftermath. And even though grief is a solitary journey in so many ways, I did not feel alone, and that really mattered. And finally, I learned to treasure life more deeply, especially life's sweetness. Loss teaches us not to take for granted the sweet things in life. Every day a loved one graces our lives is a blessing. It is so easy to quickly forget this truth when we emerge from the underworld of grief. We can so easily begin to take those things for granted again. And so I try really hard to remember that lesson from grief. This is the lesson that Billy Collins lifts up in Picnic Lightning. Then the soil is full of marvels, bits of leaf like a fresco, red-brown pine needles, a beetle quick to burrow under the loam. Then the wheelbarrow is a wilder blue, the clouds a brighter white. So I try to hang on to that. There can come a day when we stop searching for our loved one in the underworld. A day when we come back, turn back, and rejoin fully the land of the living. Even then, of course, remnants of that grief can pull us back into the underworld, but usually only briefly. the trajectory of our lives is on top of the earth, not below. Looking back on this grief about my mother's death, a particular dream I had was a marker that my time in the underworld was coming to an end. In the dream, I was communicating with my mom. She was gone, but in kind of the magical world of Harry Potter, she was alive in a portrait. Like Harry's mom and dad, she could interact with me. Though my mom never knew sign language, somehow she managed to sign, "I love you." That, it turns out, was really all I needed to know. I could let her go. I knew then that she would always, always, always be with me in here. I could make my way back to the gates to this life. And so I came back, forever changed.
We know the deal, it is a part of life. We're only here for such a short while. It's never a question. We love like we have all the time in the world. I'd never choose to leave you this early. I offer a different story to tell. I remember laughter, and baby, won't you please remember something else? I'm still here after I'm gone, in the birds singing their love songs in the summer sun. Let me warm your heart, 'cause I will always be wherever you are. I'll be that angel sitting right on your shoulder. I'll be the star shining to light your way. Not for 1 minute, don't think you are forgotten. All you have to do is think of me. And if you don't want to, then don't say goodbye. Say I will see you around the next time. But know this, I will always be here by your side. 'Cause
When the service ends in a few minutes, we invite you to join us for our combined virtual and in-person social hour. It will start at the top of the hour. We will share a brief moment of meditation to start our time together before breaking into small group cohorts for sharing and discussion. Virtual links to the social hour are in the chat box. For those of you in the sanctuary this morning, we ask that you head straight outside to do any socializing or mingling. Please proceed to the closest sanctuary door and head southeast towards the courtyard room and its exit door. Now, I invite you to join in unison in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steal our will and love of truth forever guide us. Our closing hymn is number 127 in the Great Hymnal, Can I See Another's Woes? Woe. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing if you're at home and humming if you're here in person.
And so may we notice the soil full of marvels, bits of leaf like a fresco, the wilder blue of the wheelbarrow, the brighter white of the clouds. May we have companions on the journey in times of joy as well as times of sorrow. May each of us go in peace.